start taking notes. Don, you've got one of the more impressive bios I've come across. And I'll try not to just read it per se, but at the same time, there's so much here that I think deserves sharing that I am going to read some of it. So, are you still 36 years old?
I am. Yes. Yes.
That's awesome. So it's up to date. Sometimes I get a bio and I'm like, yeah, that was 3 years ago. You look every bit of 31. So way to hold your ground on youth. You started out as an entrepreneur selling donuts to classmates for 50 cents and prepackaged treats, from your school lunch. So we may go back to that, but obviously it was in your blood, a salesman from the start and a marketer. Then you migrated into lawn care businesses and selling alarm systems door to door as a teenager, and then top selling real estate agent. In fact, in your first 9 months, you sold 67 homes. I was promoting this on the last Zoom, and quickly quizzed the group and said, who here has sold 67 homes in their first 9 months? And I didn't get and I'd love to hear a little bit about how you made that happen, given our audience is largely real estate related, realtors. Then fast forward to today, DLP Real Estate Capital, you employ now 400 individuals. That's impressive. And you're on your way to becoming a Fortune 500 company. You've scaled the business to 100 million in annual revenue in less than 10 years. That's an inspiring stat too. I want to hear more about that. And amassed $1 billion in assets under management inside of 15 years. And your growth rate is about 60% per year for the last 13 years. So every year you escalate your results by 60%. That's impressive. Let's see, you've got a book out, The Blueprint to Scaling a High Growth, High Profit Business and Company. So in an elite journal. So that's cool. Love to hear about that. We'll have some time for it for sure. And, all those things are amazing. And again, we'll dig in, but the fact that your mission supersedes profit really, really, really gets my head spinning and my blood boiling and excitement for it. And there's 4 pillars in that regard. And 1 is affordable, creating more affordable workforce housing. 2 is job creation. 3, general wealth and legacy building and you perceive that there is a crisis. And I wouldn't argue the point that it's not a crisis. And then the last is happiness and how to generate a life worth living. And so we're going to dig into all of that, but why don't we just rewind the tape a little and you share, I kind of gave the thumbnail of how you started with donuts, and maybe give us how did you get your start in early days when you were a child, and carry us into your first real, legitimate enterprise. I guess that would be donuts.
Well, appreciate that very much. Great overview. So I grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which if you've never been there, that's okay. Most haven't, but it's where Lehigh University is, probably most known today. It used to be home of Bethlehem steel capital of the world for a period of time, hour north of Philadelphia. And I grew up to 2 parents who were 16 years old when they had me. Wow. And my mom ran a home daycare. I'm the oldest of 5 and grew up in a home with 4 younger siblings and 6 other children in our home. My father was a prison guard for most of my childhood. No college degrees, no college starts, no business backgrounds anywhere in my family. So it wasn't like something that I, was kind of in you said before, in our blood, it hadn't been in our lineage to that point. But my father told, and I didn't remember the story until my father actually told it at my wedding, which was the story of when he knew I was an entrepreneur, which was in kindergarten. As you said, I was selling my Hostess, those little packs of round little donuts to my classmates for 50 cents a piece. And so the school found out and kind of put an end to it. But yeah, that kind of inspired that type of behavior, selling other things to classmates and running a lawn care business, employing my friends through middle school and early high school. And then I actually moved out of my parents' house at 17 years old as a junior in high school, and went out on my own and waited tables then to kind of make ends meet while I was in high school and into college. In 8th grade, kind of go back a moment, in 8th grade, there was a guy who came in on a career day, and you might remember those kind of middle school career days. And he showed this chart that showed that financial advisors, wealth planners, made more money than all the jobs your parents want you to become: doctors, attorneys, accountants, And I thought, wow. And he explained, you know, I was entrepreneurial and he was his own boss and independent and he had to be good. You know, it was about finance. I was like, well, I'm great at math and I'm an entrepreneur. This is for me. Like I was shadowing financial advisors in middle school through high school, went to Drexel University in Philadelphia to study finance, worked at some big companies like BlackRock and McGladrey in Poland and Merrill Lynch and such, but knew I was going to be a financial planner, got my licenses. Never once for a day did I ever think about real estate as being a path for me. Never even crossed my mind. And I would wait tables all through, as mentioned before. And this guy kept coming into the restaurant I worked at. And if anybody's ever worked in restaurant business, you might know, you know, they'll often do a contest like, hey, whoever sells the most filet mignons tonight makes $50 or something like that, right? So whatever the contest was, that's what I was selling that night. So this gentleman, who was a great salesman, his name's Nathan Robinson, he recognized, you know, the salesmanship of what I was doing and kept asking me to come work for him. And long story short, he ended up ran an ADT security dealership. So I went and met with him one day. He told me, how much money would you make a week right now? I said, about $1,000. I was, 19 years old. He said, I guarantee you come to work for me, you'll make $2,000 a week. I said, wow, that sounds really great. Some reason I believed him and I took the job and didn't really know what the job was. Found out on day one that my job was, knocking on doors. That's really what I did. I went to residential homes and knocked on people's doors. And I think because he gave me the belief that that's what not only was possible, but was expected, was to make $2,000 a week. My first paycheck was $5,280. That was one of my worst paychecks I ever had. I quickly actually became the top sales rep in the country for ADT security. At the time, there were about 60,000. Just not that I was that much better than anybody, but I'm confident I knocked on more doors than anybody. And so I was, I'd come to his house on a Friday for kind of payday right after work, and I'd sit down and he'd write me out my check. And I remember he was a Keller Williams agent as well. So he owned this dealership, but he also was a Keller Williams agent. And keep in mind, this is 2005 going into 2006. And he says, and I saw a $17,000 commission check on his table. I saw a $20,000 commission check on his table. And I said, wait a second, what's this all about? And he said, well, there's something you're interested in. I think you could do really well if you could sell alarm systems, you could sell real estate. So I'm not exaggerating, or I guess I should say I'm slightly exaggerating, that for about the next 3 weeks, I didn't sleep. I took my classes online because I was, selling alarm systems. I was in college taking 30 credits. I was very busy, but I basically didn't sleep for a few weeks, got my license online. The day I passed my exam, I flew out to Arizona and actually went to Craig Proctor conference and learned about the unique selling proposition. And day one of having my real estate license, my marketing message was, your home sold in 68 days, guaranteed, I'll buy it. And that month I got my real estate license was October 2006, which in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, where I was located, was the peak of the real estate market. Property values started slowing down, market started slowing down. So having this guarantee was a good message at a good time. And things took off pretty quick. In the scheme of things, it sounds really fast to have that many sales and so quick, but it took me 4 months to have my first sale. And that sale was about a $1,200 check, which is still probably the funniest sale I ever had, the experience I went through. But then, then it started taking momentum. So end of that first year, I made $253,000. And I was using Craigslist when Craigslist was just coming out. I was spamming the heck out of Craigslist every day. It was days where still newspapers worked. And then I started doing radio marketing towards the end of my first year, which is still a number one driver of business for our real estate brokerage. And this was all at Keller Williams. Started growing a sales team pretty much immediately. By the third month in the business, I grabbed an agent who was struggling in my office and said, hey, come be my assistant part-time. And by the end of that first week, she was full-time. By the end of the next week, I hired a second full-time assistant. Within 3 months, I had a transaction coordinator and 2 full-time assistants, so I could be doing what was most valuable, which of course is prospecting and being in front of clients, right? Being out showing houses. And that allowed things to, take off pretty quick. So that's kind of the foundation of how I got into real estate. And I'll kind of stop there and turn it back to you, Rick.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny how there's some parallelism in our worlds. I cut my teeth in college selling subscriptions to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution door to door. And, I realized quickly that no's were just a pathway to yeses. And it sounds like you adopted that mentality early on as well. And that, a no doesn't define you. In fact, it just puts you closer to the winner's circle. And I heard you say that the difference between you and the other salespeople in the organization when it was alarms was simply you felt confident you hit more doors. And so was there anything else in the magic when you were just, sometimes naive and unknowing is better than feeling like you've got to, like you just show up and you just smile and you bring your organic self. Was there anything else in a sense of preparedness or mindset or?
Yeah. It's a great question. Yeah. And later I found out, months into this short career in alarm sale, I found out that Nathan, the owner of the business, had never had a salesperson earn $1,000 a week, let alone 2,000. He told me was what was expected. So had never had anybody make $1,000 a week. So it wasn't, what was typical, but yeah, he set that expectation for me, which I think was good. And yeah, I didn't know any better, didn't know any different, didn't have any doubt in my mind. I learned quickly. It was 1 in every 51 doors I got a sale. And then I learned different ways to improve those numbers and different things. So example, in alarm sales, I learned that everybody felt they should have an alarm system, but nobody wanted to pay for one, right? It was one of those things, you don't need it until you need it, right? So I started going and walking around with iPods at the time and Nintendo Wii's. And I'd give them away when you sign up for alarm systems. So somebody would make a $3,000 commitment to get a $100 gift today, right? And that was something that helped get people to get their immediate gratification for what is really good for their family and in my mind. And so that was an idea. But the bigger thing is certainly I was willing to knock on more doors, and I was willing to work harder. I also got really good at getting referrals. So I rarely ever left a house without getting multiple referrals to other houses. And many of my nights I would leave one house at 7:00 and go to their friend's house to get another sale. And I gave them $100 for every referral that turned into a sale. I also was reading a ton of books on sales and marketing and learning, and quickly developed, simple ways, simple hacks to do better. So example, when somebody wouldn't let me in the door and they say, oh, I gotta wait till my husband gets home, and I tell me, yeah, I could follow up. I'd say, all right, what's your phone number? 484. And I just start reading the number. I didn't know what the number started with. I just chose local number, and more people would likely finish filling it out. Right.
Right.
Same thing when I'd ask for a sale, I'd say, all right, so your credit card is 9571. And so that's not my credit card starts with, oh, that's mine. So what's your, people would more naturally give it. Right. Or when I asked to go into somebody's door, when I say, hey, let me come on and show you, I wouldn't look for them to give me yes or no. I would just put my head down and I'd start, kind of walking into the door and just walk forward. Right. And people would kind of just move to get out of my way, and I was in their house. Right. Just little hacks that you just start testing things and learning from others and learning from other people and other sales professions, kind of little tips to improve your success. So were some of the things that helped a lot early on.
Right. You just took me back to my early days too, where I would have my assistant pre-print a listing agreement with all of their information,
Always.
Sort of only the price. And I would be like, hey, all we need to do is confirm a price and I'm ready to go. Is that okay? And, some of that positive physical energy. Fascinating. Yeah. And I love the question too. So, well, I don't really want it. Well, if you did want it, why would that benefit you? Or what sort of questions can you just keep the conversation going long enough? And until you kind of took me back to the assumed, like, well, everybody does this. And
yeah, that's
powerful too, is to just come in with the energy and the attitude that it's a common practice and for all the right reasons. Did you think of this, or was that a company initiative, giving away something that benefits the family and the kids? Did I understand you right?
Just an idea, that I at the time had come up with, as I kept realizing that, hey, look, people know they need this, but they don't want to kind of pay for it. And we all, for right or wrong, right, we all like instant gratification. I was like, well, if I come up with a way, and I figured out kind of the math on what I'd make on a sale, and realized I could afford to give away this gift if that increased my chance of getting a sale, and it was really effective.
Well, everyone wants to feel good and be respected, and as a parent, if your kids respect and appreciate your, that's just like sugar on the cake and sugar you're feeding them the good stuff. So that's brilliant, man. That's really, really smart. So I would challenge everyone on the call to think about what value add or top grade, or how do you give everyone in the family something that excites them along the path to winning. And, obviously we do home sales predominantly. So that's awesome. So now let's go from realtor. What was next in your world?
Yeah, so my world for quite a while has started down that path of like I described of starting to hire first, administrative support to free me up to be out with clients, and quickly learned that my time was going to be best and most impactful on the listing side. And so I started hiring agents to work with buyers, but I'd be heavily involved in taking the calls, converting the leads, scheduling the appointment for the agents, but spent a lot of my time on listings. And speaking of kind of the idea of the Nintendo Wii thing, one of the things when I started running around with a lot of buyers in my early career, I realized, until people make a financial commitment, they very often, don't end up buying a house. And I know right now it's a super hot market, it's a little different, but typical market, so often, the way I always thought about it, if I was a Pop-Tart agent, as I call them, and I pop out and show somebody a house, right? And they look at one house with me, that's it. They just call the listing agent or whatever and look at one house with me. Chance they're going to end up buying a home with me is going to be low. And very often after somebody goes and looks at homes until they make a financial commitment, they're thinking when they get back in the car, at least this is always my mind, of what a husband and wife are saying to each other is, do we really want to move? I don't know. Maybe, is it worth it? We could just finish the basement or remodel the kitchen, or do we really want to do this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what I started doing early on, and we've developed this quite a bit over the years and how we do it now, but what I started doing is saying, look, I'm going to charge people something at the start of the relationship. And in the beginning, I didn't have much of a pitch to it or anything, but I just started telling people kind of the assumed close, like you said before. All right. And so I'd bring them into the office first before I took them and showed them homes. And that's harder to do, to get them to come into the office, but it would change the power dynamic, and I'd have their time and go through kind of their needs and wants, and say, all right, great. Next step here, in order for me to help you, find a home and get you access to all the best deals, including what's off the market and yada. It's going to be a $495 payment today. That's going to get credited towards, closing. So would you like to use check or credit card? And 98% of people would say, oh, let me grab my credit card. And now once they pay $495 up front, now when they go and look at that home and they get back in their car afterwards, the question is, do we want to buy this home or another home, right? We're not debating the decision already. We've already made the decision. $500 on a $300,000 home is not a lot of money, but they've now committed, right? And so that was one of the things that was really powerful in the beginning days. So grew a brokerage till about 3 years in. We were starting to do a lot of other things. We were doing home construction. We grew a large national short sale negotiation company. We were doing property management then. We started building a real estate portfolio. We were flipping a lot of homes. We were coming in and buying homes from those who were motivated. Most of my clients were motivated home sellers. Generally, mom just moved into senior housing, or mom just passed away, unfortunately. And so sometimes we'd help them sell their home guaranteed, or sometimes we just step in and buy it. And that was really our business, our first number of years. And then it grew to a point where probably if I worked for you, Rick, it probably would have been different. But the Keller Williams group I worked with really didn't like that I was doing these other businesses, and it was kind of creating some friction. So left and launched my own brokerage, and we an overall parent company and structure, and then really started growing in the world of investment real estate, growing a large real estate portfolio, multifamily housing predominantly, new developments. And then started lending money to other real estate investors and builders and developers and flippers about 7-8 years ago. And that's been our biggest growing sector, what we do today. So in short, we went from our real estate brokerage, finding motivated home sellers was really the engine for our business. Our first 6-7 years, that's what drove everything. And that's what I spent most of my time on. I had a full-time driver for about 5 years. So because I was on so many appointments, I'd go to 3 to 5 listing appointments a day. For many years, I personally sold, and I know these ranking reports now say people do this, but they don't. I legitimately sold, 300 homes a year myself as the agent. I was out on 3 listing appointments a day, 15, 20 a week for a lot of years. That was my world. And that was the engine. Motivated sellers, what drove the buyer leads, drove other listings, right? That's what drove the brokerage. And then kind of transitioned as our business evolved, that bringing in investors into our investment funds became our engine that allowed us to go out there and do all the things we do to this day. Today, DLP is a business of about a dozen companies that make up DLP Capital, DLP Real Estate Capital, and all revolving though around housing. So we're an investment company, but we invest directly. We partner with other operators. We lend to them. We still do brokerage, property management, construction management, et cetera.
Yeah, that's amazing. And man, you scaled quickly. So let's unwind it a bit for the prototype agent who's selling 20, 30, 40 houses a year. Obviously, you've made it clear that lead gen is job one, and you've also made it clear, and I think most of us on the call get it. It's all about listings, and it's all about having some captivating a marketing statement, something that's a lure that brings people in. When you went from and you said 3 to 5 listing appointments a day.
Yeah, an average day was 3. But 3 to 5 a day.
Do 3 minimum. So, I mean, that's amazing in itself. And I would challenge everyone again on the call that, I mean, what would your world look like if you went on 3 listing appointments a day? I mean, how many, even if your conversion is, I mean, your conversion, do you remember kind of roughly what your conversion was?
Yeah, we've been tracking it, for 15 years now. And obviously today it's as high as it's ever been because the market's so hot. But historically over many years, we've converted 50 to 60% of appointments we go on to a listing, so that they actually list with us. Vast majority, I mean, we have less than a 2% of appointments we go on that list with somebody else. So usually it's either they take action with us or they don't take action. And over many years it was because they owe too much on their house or whatever the case was, right? But and then out of the ones who list with us over our career, about 2/3 of those turn into sales. So historically, over the last kind of cycle, we convert 35 to 40% of every appointment to a closed transaction. So appointments are very valuable, right? In our market's wasn't a high end market, but our average commission was $8,000. So we'd look at it and say every appointment to us was worth $3,000, right? I go on 3 appointments, that's a $9,000 day, right? In terms of the revenue I'm going to make, assuming I do the appropriate steps and follow through.
Well, that's an inspired way to look at it. And instead of thinking about every closing and what it's worth, because that's a common way to think, and an uncommon way to think is that every conversation has value. It may not be the one that pulls the trigger and drops a token, on the slot machine, but eventually it will. And so by knowing your numbers, you tip the scales of guessing, and you tip the scales of motivation as well, to know that if you're 2 in and the 3rd is the payday, man, don't stop now, because that's, to me, the saddest reality on the planet is you stop just before the real big win. So with,
and Rick, let me tell you a really quick story made me think of there that might help people. So, and I know there's not as many for sale by owners today as in past days and so forth, but I guess you could argue in some markets with Zillow now today, maybe there's more, but anyway, I had a junior agent who I'd set out and said, hey, I want you to call on these 10, well, actually, I rephrased, I set him 10 appointments with 10 for sale by owners. And we use the backdoor approach that probably some of you have done, which is, hey, I have a potential buyer, right? Which in this market, probably never been easier to do. Hey, I got a potential buyer for your home. And so he went out there. I'm a buyer team on this top selling sales team, and I represent buyers. And I'd like to just come preview your home. And he went on these 10 appointments. And literally 5 of them, he came back to me and said, hey, these 5 down. So when he'd be walking through the home, he'd say, oh, this isn't, you might not be a fit for this buyer, but, we have this guaranteed sale program. We have this marketing plan that'll get you the top dollar for your home. And I'd like you to talk to Don, right? And, 5 of them said, yes, I'm open to talking to Don, right? After he got out there and created a good impression and showed up on time, showed up 15 minutes early, right? And rang the doorbell and took 2 steps back and had a smile on his face and shook, do all the things that were trained to go and create a good impression that matter. So he gives me this list, the list I gave him. He comes back and said, these 5 people want to talk to you, right? Great, awesome, exciting. I call these 5 people. 4 of them agree to let me come out and talk to them. 1 didn't get back to me, and I list these 4 houses, right? A few weeks go by, and his name was Todd, and he calls me and says, Don, one of the clients I told you to call said you'd never called them. I said, what do you mean I never called them? I've already listed their homes. I've called all 5 of them. I found out that I called the wrong 5. So I called the 5 who said they didn't want to talk to me, right? They weren't interested. And I called them thinking that they said they wanted to talk to me. And after he said that, I was like, oh, now it makes sense why they seemed so strange. But 4 of them listed and sold their homes with me. So then I quickly called the other 5 and was able to save, I think, 3 of them, if I remember correctly, because it'd been a couple weeks. My point being is, I went in with the assumption that they want to sell their house and I'm the best at doing that. So of course they want to talk to me, right? Versus the mindset, oh, they're not interested in talking to a real estate agent. So, I'm not gonna call them.
Man, that's a cool story. And it reflects back to the premise that mindset is everything, man. Half the battle is between your ears, not in the outward expression or the communication. And when your heart says that we're supposed to do business, it's undeniable energy that other people feel. So awesome, man. That's a cool story. Thanks for pulling that in. Constance had a good question, but I think it's like a second or third tier question because I want to dive into, so a lot of agents again sell houses, and then if I understood correctly, your next migration was into flipping and buying, and so that guaranteed sale program might have been one lead source. How did you generate, what was the starting place? Both obviously you were selling enough houses that you were probably financially healed, but if I'm a young agent and let's just say I make 150 grand a year and I don't have a lot of extra cash, how did you path it? And then how would you recommend someone else start to
Yeah.
augment their business and layer more income sources?
Yeah, great question. So the guaranteed sale program was, one form of leads, but then quickly we started marketing through all of our channels. We call the immediate buyout program. We'll just give you a cash offer as is, and you control the closing date, you control the timeline, you control, given power. Now we even do, hey, you can lease it back from us, you can buy it back from us. We do a lot of creative ways to really, people are choosing that offer more times than not for control and flexibility. All right, they're trading off some dollars for control and flexibility. In this age where everybody likes to order something and have it at their home later this afternoon, right? More and more was want control. We don't want to go through the timeline of having to move and go through headaches on somebody else's, schedule or deal with showings while we're in the house. So more and more people are willing to pay for convenience, right? So that's a big part of what we would sell. So the thing that, and then we used to, and I know there's not as many of them now, there's still some out there, but we would buy we buy houses lead sources that would be available, online digital leads. And we did all the mailings and bandit leads and those ads that say, we buy houses and all that type of stuff. But most of what we did was through the brand of the brokerage we were building, the team we were building. But explaining in our marketing kind of message today is know all the options, right? So you call us, you're gonna know all the options. We can buy your home. We can sell it guaranteed. We can sell it for the most amount of money. We can tell you what it would sell for as is. We'll tell you what repairs you can do and what it would get to maximize value. So if you call Open Door, right, they're going to give you one option, a cash offer, right? You call a typical agent, they're going to give you one option, what they can sell your home for right now. We're going to give you all the options, right? And that's been kind of our marketing message for years, and to kind of combat the Open Door type models and the iBuyers and such. So how I did it financially. So in the beginning, I mean, I didn't have a lot of capital. I literally had saved up about $100,000 from selling alarm systems, and that's literally the cash I used to buy my first deal. And then I started working with private lenders, which is the core. That's when we realized how tough that was to get that kind of money, and how difficult that space was, and how seldom they actually understood home flipping, the lenders in the space. And that's what led us about 8 years ago to launch our own business doing that. So in short, as a self plug, I mean, that we do that with agents all over the country, where we'll give you, it works out to be typically 90% of the capital. So, if you're buying a house for 200 grand, you're going to need 20 grand, not 200 grand. And what I'd say as well is, so somebody contacts us to buy their home, right? They say, hey, I saw your ad that you'll buy homes. That's what I want, right? We don't care if that's how they call us, or if they call us because we sold the home across the street, or they call us because their sister referred them to us, right? Whether they're calling us to list their home or they're calling us for a cash offer, whichever way they get to us, our inside sales agent's job is to say, they'll talk to them about what they want to talk about. I want that cash offer. How does it work? How quickly do you close it? But once they set that appointment, then what they always tell the client is, I want to explain what's going to happen when my, listing specialist comes out and talks to you. So I know you're really excited about the cash offer, but what we want to make sure to do is we're going to make sure you know all the options. And so when they're going to come out, they're going to give you an evaluation of, yes, but we'll pay for your home cash, but also explain what you could do to sell your home for the most money, or and tell you what we would guarantee to sell your home for. And then, based on your financial ability, if you're not in the position to buy the homes, well, then, don't buy the homes, or set the price that's not going to be attractive, and use that opportunity to drive them to listing their home, right? And create the reason why that's better for them, right? Also, another great option is, if you don't want to become an investor, is find good investors in your market. And it's never been an easier time to do that than right now, that you can then get the deal under contract and turn that deal over to an investor who you can make a commission on that sale maybe, but then also, get that investor to agree to give you the listing when they renovate it, right? and that's how you build a relationship with a home flipper. You can bring a good home flipper a few deals a year, you could probably get all their listing business, right? Because other agents aren't bringing them deals to buy in this market. So that's another route to potentially go.
That's cool. And so you obviously found, I guess, hard money is kind of the term for private lenders, and you went through that phase. And do you have your own construction company? Did I hear that as well? Renovation?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So, in the beginning days, we just found good contractors to work with. And then what happened for us is very quickly, we grew so much. So we had, 30, 40, 50 houses under construction at all times. And we just couldn't find enough good contractors. So what I ended up doing is I ended up taking the best GC I had and convincing them to come in-house and run my construction company. And so we built things in-house. If I were to go back, I wouldn't fully do it. At one point, we had 100+ people in construction. We were a painter, we were an HVAC contractor, we were a plumber, we were an electrician. It was a lot to do in scattered real estate, but having good experts in construction and project management is really important if you're going to do a lot of renovations. But otherwise, you just need to find somebody you can know and trust who has that expertise that you can count on to handle it.
So when you had those people in the construction team, do you outsource or not outsource, but are you marketing to the general consumer as well?
We never did that. No, we've always only self-serviced our own construction needs. We've never had the desire to be a contractor for others. It's always just been servicing our own investments.
Makes perfect sense. And so give us the landscape. So now what I hear from you is that as an entrepreneur, if you see an opportunity, you try to fill the gap and create a value proposition that's better than what you had available. And so you went from selling houses, building a team and leveraging that, and to your own construction flipping business. And then you recognized the financial need. Is that the next thing where you started, using that financial resources to help other people replicate your success?
Yeah, and sure. And, our purpose is dream, live, prosper, passionately creating prosperity through innovative real estate solutions. And so every one of our businesses has come from seeing an issue and an opportunity that wasn't being well served, and deciding, hey, we'll expand into that area. One thing I'd like to caution is become very easy if you go on our website or look at us and say, oh wow, they're running dozen different businesses and that looks really cool. I want to do construction. I want to do property management. I want to do investments. I want to do, I want to do all these things. We didn't do all these things overnight. We added a business line every couple years in our mix. And we only would ever do so once every business we were already running was running really well, was running profitably, had the appropriate leadership in place. And I've put as much effort around building a disciplined operating system that we can have multiple businesses over the last 10 years as anything else. And that's what my book, Building an Elite Organization, is all about, is the operating system we've built called the Elite Execution System. If any of you ever heard of EOS or traction, that's kind of a foundational part of our operating system, but building a disciplined way that you go about running a business. And all these different businesses lines are more similar than dissimilar. But it's hard running multiple businesses at the same time, especially if you don't have, it's impossible without strong leadership in place. And it's impossible, in my opinion, to do if each business is operating under different terminology, different language, different operating systems, different purposes, different missions, different values. You've got to get, what you are as a core, what you're focused on, who your client is, what your purpose is, before you expand into other business lines. But yes, we've naturally over time kind of added. It went from brokerage to then also running a home flipping business, then added construction, then we added property management, then we added investment management or fund management, then added lending, and then added a title company, and then added a loan servicing company, and then added insurance, and we've added these businesses, over time.
Wow. And there's only one of you. So obviously, if you don't create a strong foundation to begin with at each, as you level up, the likelihood of succeeding and successfully stacking obviously goes down significantly. So let's speak to two things real quick. One is finding talent, because this doesn't happen without talent. I see one guy sitting on the other side of a camera, and just the thought of all of those things running, clearly you're operationally sound in your skill set, and we'll talk about that after. But what is your process for finding and hiring talent?
So for the last 6 years, I'd say maybe 7 years, the number one allocation of my time and I'm CEO still of all of our business lines, heavily involved still in operations, involved heavily in what we call acceleration, sales and marketing. I'm a very still hands-on, to use the EOS term. I'm the visionary and the integrator still in the organization. I just hired my first COO who starts on Monday. I basically held the CEO and COO seat for years now. But still, with all that said, the number one allocation of my time has been for 6 or 7 years has been on hiring leaders. And the number two allocation of my time, and soon these are going to reverse, has been the development of my leadership team. That's where I spend more time than anything else. So on average, an average week for the last 6, 7 years is about 6 interviews a week that I do. And on an average week, I have 6 to 8 one-on-one meetings with one of my leaders, coaching, developing them, getting aligned, let alone group trainings and stretch projects and so forth, and that we do. So finding leaders specifically, what I always think about is, everybody I talk to says they can't find enough good talent. It's so hard. It's so difficult. I hear, I can't because my business is too small. I'm not in a market that has a lot of talent. I'm in a small, all these excuses and reasons, right, that they can't find talent. I've grown my business up until 5 or 6 years ago. Almost everybody was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I promise you, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania is not the hotbed of talent in the country. I could almost guarantee your market has a better talent base than Bethlehem, Pennsylvania does. Even now, I went to St. Augustine, Florida. I'm not in Miami. I'm in St. Augustine, Florida. It's a small market. So what I find when I talk to people, they put so much time and energy around finding listings or clients or leads, right? And everybody knows, right? In order to find business, it's sales and marketing, right? But they don't put the same effort into finding people, right? So they think people are just going to show up at their door and knock on their door because they sell some houses or something, right? So you have to invest the time and effort. So first thing that we always start in our organization is identifying what are we really hiring for? And so we call this process, we have a tool we use called RREK, role, responsibilities, expectations, and key numbers. Clearly defining success for somebody before we hire them is really, really important. So that's the first starting point we do. Then we use tools called predictive index to evaluate the behavioral profile we're looking for and the cognitive ability that role is going to need. Then once we do all that, we create a job ad. Which sounds simple, but a lot of people never get to that step. And then once we create the job ad, we do the next step, which a lot of people never get to, which is we post the job, right? So we post it on Indeed, we post it on LinkedIn, we post it through our social media channels. We get the job out there to our relationships and vendors and so forth. Let everybody know we're hiring for this role. Depending on the role, we involve external recruiters. So we do work we do marketing to get the job out there, right? And then once we do that, and I know people who do all those steps and then they get resumes coming in and they don't make time to review the resumes, right? Well, then resumes come in and we actually review them and we put them into a screening process, which for years was one admin who was doing this with other responsibilities who would then, follow up with them. And what we've been doing for years is we have them do a video interview of themselves through a technology called Spark Hire. We then have them complete a behavioral assessment and a cognitive assessment. And then once they do those things, then if we think they're a match, after we watch their video interview and review their assessments, then we do an interview with the hiring manager generally. That interview goes well, then we get into a panel interview with the leaders. And then a small organization might just be one person, but we go through multiple rounds of interviews to really make sure this person's going to be a fit. So the old saying, hire slow and fire fast, we take our time to hire the right people, but we're investing a lot of time and energy. We'll spend on filling one role 100 hours. Of time in that process. But this is somebody I'm counting on investing 50 hours a week for me for the next 10 years. Right. So it's well worthwhile. So we put a lot of discipline and focus. We put just as much time and energy around sourcing and finding talent as we do around sourcing and finding, deals, right. Or business.
Man, that's awesome. And I'm absolutely certain that if you're that level of intentionality around selecting the right person and making sure there's a cultural match, not only pays dividends for the organization, but the candidate feels an energy of purpose in your approach that's undeniable. And the right people are going to run towards it. And the people that are probably a mismatch will be turned off by that level of detail. Maybe dig into your book just for a minute. And, I heard you touching on a few touch points around building an elite organization. Anything else you'd add to inspire our group to grab your book and read it?
Yeah. So what I would say first is, I'll mention who the book is kind of for and who it's not for, to give context. So the book is called Building an Elite Organization. And the kind of subtitle is The Blueprint to Scaling a High Profit, High Growth Business. And as you mentioned before, Rick, we're the first example of this. We've grown 60% or more every year for 15 years. We've grown 300 to 500% every 3-year period. Last year, we were the 4th fastest growing company in America that had been on the Inc. 5000 5 times ever. We've been on the list 9 straight years. So it's consistent discipline we put in approach, which is what this book is about. We call the Elite Execution System. And so it's not a book for, entrepreneurship. It's not a book on how to start a business. It's really a book for once you've started a business and your business is starting to go well and you're generating some revenue and you have clients and people want what you have to sell and now you start dealing with the challenge of hiring people and scale and communication challenges and prioritization challenges and all the things that come with starting to have success, how to then be able to scale and scale profitably, which is important, right? Most of us probably on this meeting, most of you are probably like me. I didn't have venture-backed money where I could grow my business without worrying about profit, right? I have to grow profitably, which is much harder than just growing. And so that's what the book's about, is putting all the structure in place of starting with, you kind of said a moment ago, building the right foundation. What are your core values? What is your purpose? What's your mission? We use a tool we developed called the compass. It lays out a clear direction of where you're going in your business. And then put all the disciplines around the 4 quadrants of a business, which we call strategy, people, operations, and acceleration. Those 4 parts need to work together. So anybody who's in this podcast are people who want to learn and want to grow, want to get better. And, kudos to everybody here who's on there, right? You're already in that small group of people who are out searching to improve, right? But I think what's hard, and I'm a person, I complete 2 or 3 books a week, every week, and I have for many, many years. So I read and learn constantly, right? And mainly on Audible or Libro now, but audio listening. But so I'm constantly looking for information, right? And if you listen to one expert, they tell you all you need to build the greatest business in the world is to master leadership, right? Another one tells you all you need to do is become an expert in content marketing, right? Another one, all you need to do is become great at management. Another one, all you need to do is get great at hiring, right? And if you put all your focus around this one area, you're going to end up with a lopsided business and one that's not profitable. Trying to pull all the important things together and growing a business is much harder. And there's not a lot of great books out there or insights out there how to grow a great organization versus just expertise around one area you want to improve on. Because you listen to one of these books, they tell you if only you were a better leader, right, everything else would happen. I wish that was the case. Leadership is at the top of the list for sure, but there's so many other important pieces that you have to have. So what we try to do is provide a real blueprint and all the actionable tools to actually put it into action to be able to scale consistently and make an impact, which is what we're all about. So that's a little bit of highlight. And then we have some cool tools that go along with that, like an elite self-journal, helps you put the right discipline into your life, to put the right discipline into your organization. And then we have lots of tools and different things we do to help people on the journey of scaling.
Man, that's awesome. And so I don't think anyone succeeds at the level that you have without some setbacks and some, face plants and failures. Can you share a couple of big lessons you've learned or moments in time where you're like, man, don't ever do that again? And
it's a great question. And, I've been very blessed and recognize it that I've been fortunate. I've never had, I don't have one of those, I was 2 moments away from bankruptcy, or I didn't have a bottom out type of situation. We've had a very steady, consistent growth. And I think part of it is my kind of mindset, a growth mindset, is I don't really dwell on setbacks. I don't really dwell on errors or mistakes or failures. I try to look at every time as a learning opportunity. We do lots of kind of after action briefs, we kind of call them, after we don't do something right. And we say, what didn't we do right? So let's make sure we don't do that again. But I had Hal Elrod, who you might know is a great guy, who wrote the Miracle Morning. He was at my event I just did this past week. And, his whole kind of message of his keynote speech was, can't change it. Right. And it's kind of what he says is, he gives himself 5 minutes to be upset over something that goes wrong and then move on from it. Right. And that's kind of the approach I've always taken. So But I haven't had a big nearly going out of business situation, but I've had a number of business lines that we've gone down and we started launching that then, midway through, we realized this wasn't best aligned with the rest of our business and we shut them down. I had a technology company about 10 years ago, which our client base was the top real estate sales team in the country. And we had about 100 of the top 250 real estate teams in the country who used our system. Any of you guys who know what Boomtown is, or Tiger Leads, or Commissions Inc., we came in right before Commissions Inc. And actually, a lot of what became Commission Inc. came from us when mastermind sessions that we spent with Dwayne and helping him develop that. We never put enough focus on it where we got enough to scale. And I ended up selling my interest to my partners, and we called it positioning for profits. And but it was way better than Tiger Leads and Boomtowns. Some of you guys might remember, been around a while. 10 years ago, the only leads that came into your lead management system were the leads they generated. If a lead came through Zillow or Realtor.com, you had to manually put it in your system, right? We were the first to do things like lead parsing and basic things, right? The technology and the system was great, but we didn't do a good enough job of scaling it and putting the resources around it, and spent a couple years really working on it before I said, this isn't the top of our list and best aligned with where we're going, and kind of stepped out of it. So I've had lots of those types of things. And I'd say the biggest thing when I look back, over time and say, what should I have done different? What should I have changed? Almost always it comes down to, even though I put a lot of focus on it, still almost always is I should have hired sooner. I should have invested in people sooner. That's the first and foremost thing I almost always come back to, that I should have been willing to do this even faster. And then the second thing I think when I look back is often I knew what I needed to do in situations, but hesitated to make decisions, right? And I always say, any issue you have in your life or your business comes down to only one reason. It's because you haven't yet made a decision, right? So anything that's holding you back or issue you're dealing with, you need to be able to make a decision, right? And too often we neglect, or we push off making decisions, and we keep ourselves in this purgatory of not knowing what to do next, and thinking about something where almost always our first, kind of after we evaluated the situation, our first thought was the best decision anyway. And if we would have got it done, it's the same kind of concept just in general. When you got something on today, right? You got a big issue you got to deal with. You got a client who's pissed off that, that something went wrong, that they want some money in the reply to inspection, and you ignore calling them all day long, right? Because you're dreading having that conversation. And it plagues you all day and distracts you from doing all the other important things you have to do. If you would have just called them and got it over with, you would have had such a more productive day or week or so forth. So those would be a couple of my, lessons over my career.
Man, that's awesome. So in terms of your, let's see, let's go back. I tell you what, Constance, here's your question. So going back to helping other people, which I think is brilliant. And then just so I don't want to run out of time, because I really want to talk about the 4 pillars and why you're passionate about it. But how do you structure the offers for other investors just to participate and grow that segment of your business? And the flip is, I guess you're helping other people with their investments. You mentioned 10% down. Yeah. I mean, what does that look like? Just a thumbnail to inspire people to consider it.
Super quick backstory there. So try to be super quick. So, we built the first, 12 years of our career, 10 years of our career in our business, mainly around at the center was us being a operator and investing in real estate. It's been kind of the main center of our business. And that's how we've grown to the point we are today. Last year this year we'll do about 500 million of revenue, a little under 2 billion of AUM. Has mainly been grown through our self-growing our businesses. And we've been transitioning here over the past couple years heavily. And as we look ahead, as our BHAG right now, our big, hairy, audacious goal is to become a Fortune 500 company through impacting 5 million lives through 500,000 solutions. And as we think ahead to how we're going to go from our size today to Fortune 500, which means we need to grow by about 15 times our current size, we've realized the best way we're going to do that is going to be through partnering with other great entrepreneurs, mainly today around the world of housing. And so that's, what the big part of what the book is about, and what our lending business, I think the question is about is, but more so what we're focused on is building partnerships with great operators, developers, builders, brokers, where we can provide all of our knowledge, all of our systems around the lead execution system, our knowledge around these business lines, our capital to great individuals in the world of real estate specifically. And that's what I was mentioning. I had How Elrod at our event this past weekend. We did our elite mastermind and workshop event. We call them 4-day event. We had about 400 people, mainly focused on, we bring people into this membership, this partnership, where we come alongside them, helping them implement our elite execution system, and then providing them with the bulk of their capital as a lender. And then as we build relationships as an equity partner as well. But as a simple starting point, maybe the question is, we start a lot of those relationships off as a lender relationship, where we come in, and because all of our capital is in our balance sheet, it's 100% our discretionary capital. And we understand this business really well. We're able to look at it probably different than most lenders and create pragmatic relationships where we can provide you, as I said, typically it's 90% of the purchase money plus the renovation money or construction money, and can help a lot in helping you, maximize those investments and provide a lot of insights and perspectives. We've done literally thousands of home flips as a flipper, and we've done many more thousands as a lender and partner. So that's a little bit of color. That side of our business is called, the lending side is called DLP Lending. Our parent company is called DLP Capital, and lending's kind of an arm of that.
So an agent could utilize that resource for their own building of their own personal portfolio, but they could also refer their investor clients as well, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and being able to bring, an investor you want to get their business from, right? We're able to bring them a reliable source of capital that can accelerate their business, can be a huge value add to the relationship you build with that investor.
Awesome. So DLP Lending,
yep,
who would be the contact person or the source? How would they reach out and find somebody?
Yeah, you can go to dlplending.com. You can just send an email to we have a great sales team who's on kind of available to chat with you kind of anytime. You can just send an email to info@dlplending.com as well. And somebody will pretty much responds 24/7. One of our great specialists will get in touch with you, or you can call and pull it up right now. I don't know off the top of my head. You can call 484-285-8830, but you can find all that on dlplending.com.
dlplending.com, man. That's awesome. So let's take the last few minutes, and then we'll have a minute, maybe there's another question or two and some ahas and some gratitude statements, which I love to close out with that. The 4 pillars in your mission that weaves into everything you do is, if I understand it, is affordable workforce housing, job creation, general wealth and legacy crisis, information and inspiration, and then happiness. Can you just kind of give us a thumbnail across the 4 and why you find those so inspiring and how you're attacking it?
Yeah, and so I'll try to keep it as quick as I can here. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I set up a foundation called the DLP Positive Returns Foundation. We have a giving policy at DLP where we give 1% of all of our team members time to ministry, to service projects. We give 1/4% of our revenue, 1/4% of our capital we raise. So this year it'll be over $1 million that we give to the foundation, which is great. It's good. It's exciting. What we can do with $1 million, and that's growing every year. It gets bigger because we're getting bigger. And so, but over the last couple of years, I really realized, wait a second, that's great. And, eventually I'm going to have $100 million foundation and we can make an impact with, and that's really exciting. That's a lot of people that's a big number, right? It's a lot of impact, but so I look and say, well, wait a second. I run a business, DLP Capital, where this year we're going to do 500 million in revenue, right? And, soon we'll be doing billions a year revenue, right? So how do I go and how do I use DLP, my platform of investing in housing and helping people grow their businesses? How do I leverage that to make an impact in everything we do, right? Instead of just the philanthropy or the tithing we do, how do we make an impact in everything we do? So we really started getting very clear and focused around making an impact through everything we do. And now every investment we make, has to make a positive impact as a starting point around, the housing affordability of workforce housing, which right now, simple terms, 50% of Americans are spending more than of renters are spending more than 1/3 of their income on rent. 1/4% of Americans are spending over half of their income on rent, and it's getting worse every day. And since COVID, it's only accelerated. It's a major problem. People can't afford to live in, local, doctors, not doctors, nurses, police officers, social workers, et cetera. They can't afford to live where they work generally. And it's a huge problem almost everywhere in the entire country. So that's the first thing we're focused on, making sure everything we do is making an impact there. And that's a filtering to any investment we make. It has to be affordable. It has to be less than 30% of our rent has to be less than 30% of our immediate income. So that's number one. Number two, we know that we're in an incredible jobs crisis as well, COVID and such, the things we're dealing with today, but more significantly is going to be even the automation that's coming down the pike, that's going to automate out 20 to 40% of American jobs won't be here in 10 to 20 years. That doesn't scare me. I think we're going to have this amazing boom of productivity and job creation, but that job creation isn't going to get created by Joe Biden. That job creation is going to get created by small businesses. And it's hard to grow a small business. It's very difficult to do so and scale it profitably. And we think that the biggest way we can make an impact on this crisis is helping entrepreneurial small businesses be able to scale and create new jobs. And that's what the book is about. Frankly, that's a big part of why I'm on this podcast with you, is we want to help people scale businesses and create new jobs. The third crisis we're really focused on is the legacy crisis, which the starting point of that is, believe it or not, people like a lot of us on this call right now are first generation wealth creators, right? We're going to create wealth for our families. And statistically speaking, somewhere between 70 to 90% of the wealth this generation on this call creates will have been lost by the second or third generation. The old saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. And we don't believe that has to be that way. And so through some better planning and some education, not only is the wealth being lost, but the wealth isn't driving the impact in our families, impact in the world, on crises that were important to that it can. And so there's a lot of things we're doing around helping people live and leave a legacy and avoid this crisis. And the fourth crisis is the happiness crisis, which these all contribute to. But statistically right now, over half of Americans are struggling with some form of mental illness, the largest being depression. We have the highest rates of unhappiness in America we've ever had. And COVID certainly has affected this, but this was happening before COVID as well. And a few of the reasons for it. The first reason I believe, and this is a challenge kind of everybody in this meeting, first reason I believe people are unhappy, the first real reason that people are unhappy, I believe, is because less and less people have a connection with the Lord, with their Creator. And I think people are out searching for connection and other means that they can't replace. They're looking to find that level of connection they can only have with the Lord. So that's the first opportunity. We're a Christian organization, and we want to help people connect. We put Bibles in every apartment and every home we have. We want to get the word out, help other people be inspired to run faith-based organizations and understand that that's our biggest job, is to help connect people to the Lord. But then the second reason that people are unhappy is historically, the great Dale Carnegie says that the number one human desire is that of importance and significance. That's what everybody wants at the core. We want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and we want to have the feeling of importance. In our past generations, we used to get that from their career, right? In their company. They go work at one company, one career, their whole life. That was their identity, their significance, their importance. That's no longer the case, right? People change jobs all the time. They change careers. Less and less people feel a connection to their career and their company. And I believe that's our responsibility as job creators, to help our people feel connected to something bigger than themselves and understand the impact that they're able to make, and help our people. I don't want employees who are just good, who are great at DLP and are great at their job. I want people who are great at life. I want great fathers and great mothers and great sisters and great daughters and great leaders in their church. And we call it living fully. We want people who are succeeding in the 8 F's of life, which are faith, family, friends, freedom, fun, fulfillment, and finance. We want them to be knocking out the park in all areas. And you can at the same time. You don't have to sacrifice one or the other. It's called work-life integration. Jeff Bezos just published an article a few days ago, actually, where he said he thinks the concept of work-life balance is debilitating. It's a broken concept. It makes you think it's a trade-off of work and life. It should be a circle, as he calls it, where you can integrate being great in all of these areas at the same time. It used to be back in our fathers or our grandfathers, where if you were going to succeed at work, you had to be at the office, right? You had to stay there to 8, 9 o'clock, right? And especially as in us in this meeting, right? We have freedom, flexibility. We can incorporate all these aspects of life. I consider any time I spend in my life that I'm working on 4 of these 8 F's at the same time, to use a baseball analogy, as a home run, right? If I'm only working on one in that moment, it's a single. If I can incorporate 2 of them, it's a double, right? If I can be incorporating family and faith and my, in business or finance and, and fitness all at the same time, that's a home run activity. And incorporating those things all together and helping accept that it's our job as job creators to help our people live fully, help our people succeed in all aspects of life is a big focus. And there's a whole chapter of that in my book. And it's a big focus of what we want to do and how we think we can make an impact on happiness here in America and around the world.
Man, that's awesome. And as expected, man, this hour was like 12 minutes in my mind. So I could take another 2 hours, I bet, and we'd generate even more interest. And in the spirit of your time and being respectful, do you have 3 or 4 minutes remaining? Can you do it?
I'm actually looking right now. Yes, I can. I got it.
All right. If you say no, it's okay, man. I'll just.
I'm shooting a quick ping out to the couple internal team members in my next meeting right now, telling them I'm running a few minutes late. But yes.
All right, man. That's amazing. And needless to say, guys, this guy. I mean, you look at what you built and the responsibility and the amount of heart and energy, and you don't build it the way you built it without a purposeful foundation. Which again goes back to the context of the book. Highly recommend everyone read it. Any ahas? Let's take even 60 seconds, 2 minutes. Who can unmute and just share what you got from today to fill Don's bucket to know that his time was well spent? Mika, I know you said, for me, this is the most inspirational and motivational conversation I've been able to participate in. Thanks for sharing. Signed, First Generation Wealth Creator. You're special. That's awesome. Anybody else have an aha or maybe even a question or a thought? No pressure, but don't let me down.
Hey, Rick, it's Constance.
Hey, Constance.
First of all, thank you, Don. This is by far, and I've sat in a lot of masterminds with this company, by far the best one I've ever been in. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very kind.
I really appreciate that ultimately for you, it's reciprocity, because so many agents, myself included, when I first started doing this, it's just about, making money. And at the end of the day, that's kind of the byproduct. And for me, listening to this, it just sort of fed some areas that I've been working on, but also gave me, I can't wait to read your book. So thank you. And I agree with what you said at the end. You have to have a connection. At the end of the day, regardless of what it is for you, you have to have a connection that makes you, that brings you home, keeps you calm, and makes you better. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well said.
Thanks, Constance. Anybody else have something to share? And while you're thinking about clicking on and sharing, I'll add that I love that your number one job is talent scout. You didn't say it exactly like that, but that really, at the end of the day, you're only as good as the people around you that represent what you stand for. And it's the foundation that to carry you the distance. Anybody else have an aha?
And Rick, while we wait, I just dropped in the chat box for everybody, DLP Elite. I know I threw out different domains, but that's the domain for the book and the journal and a bunch of free tools that come with the book. And I believe, I'm looking at it right now, I believe it's still set up, that you can fill out and request there, and we'll send you a signed copy of the book as well. So you can go there. And then one quick note, I've been fighting on this for about 4 or 5 months, still waiting on Audible to finally put the book on. It's still not on Audible. My podcast, which is all about impact, is called Impact with Don Wenner, is on Audible, but we just switched our company. And if anybody's looking for good ways to listen to books, we just switched our company because Audible got rid of their business account on July 1st to libro.fm. It's an awesome platform. I have no ownership or anything. Libro.fm to listen to audiobooks. And I know practically as much as many of us would say, yeah, I want to go read this book. It's a thick book, and sitting down for 6 hours or whatever and reading it is hard for us to fit in, but listening to it on Audible, it's the only way I listen to books, and you can do so on Libro.fm, or you can download it on Apple or a lot of other places too, or Kindle or whatnot, but I forgot to mention that. I think Rick, is that Rick who froze up? I think everybody else is moving. Okay, so I guess it's Rick. He must have froze up.
I think Rick might have lost connection.
Yeah. I'm checking the chat box if there are any other questions there, but I don't see any. So.
Does anyone want to share their ahas?
Hey, Mr. Don, my name is Oscar. I'm a sophomore at UJ, and sorry, I'm not very well spoken. I get nervous around people like you, but
Awesome.
yeah, I would have paid $1 million for this advice. You're an example of a great balance of, you know, faith and fortune and you know, family, and I really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Mika, were you about to chime in?
Yes, I was just going to add that I appreciate the humble beginnings, because so often we hear from people who had a head start by, I heard someone recently say they had a rich aunt who helped them, or, you know, someone gave them a step into whatever they were doing. And our stories are similar, from teenage parents to just taking it step by step. And so this just motivates from a realization I've had recently. And I just thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing your story.
Thank you. And one quick note there, I didn't touch on, but one of the great opportunities, some people think it's a tough thing to do, but so I, you know, came from, you know, no financial backing and started my career, as I mentioned, my parents, but my mom has been working for me for 13 years. My dad's been working for me for 12 years. My stepfather's been working with me for 4 years. My stepmother's been working for me for 9 years. My brother-in-law for 8 years. So a lot of the family, and they're earning a lot more money. They earn it, and there's, you know, very limited, I can't say there's no, but very limited nepotism. None of them report to me. None of them are senior leaders, but they're all, you know, able to you know, grow as people and achieve ratings. And that's a great opportunity to be able to employ those, especially, you know, my parents didn't have, you know, college backgrounds or come from any understanding of how to run a business or see the kind of opportunities the way I was able to see it at a young age. So it's been a great blessing. All right. Well, I guess if Rick's still on, I do got to jump to a 12 that I'm a little bit behind on. So I really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you. And hope to get the opportunity to meet some of you again, and look forward to hearing some of your journeys. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it. Great. This is great.